I wasn't supposed to be home this summer. Originally, I'd lined up a part-time job in the city and a shared apartment with two guys from my dorm. But the job fell through at the last minute. The apartment was gone in a heartbeat, and I found myself dragging my suitcase back to my mom's place with nothing but a vague sense of frustration and a few crumpled t-shirts. She didn't mind. In fact, she sounded genuinely happy when I called. "The guest room's all yours," she said cheerfully. "I'll finally have someone to finish all the food I make." And for the first week, everything was pretty normal. Quiet mornings, coffee on the porch, running errands for her, helping fix the screen door. Same old suburb I grew up in. But then she started coming over again. Tanya, my mom's best friend since college. 42, divorced, childless, and somehow looking better now than she ever did when I was a kid. I remembered her from barbecues and birthdays, always the one with the loud laugh, the bold lipstick, the stories that made adults laugh and kids feel like they were missing something. Back then, I didn't think much of her. But that summer, I noticed everything. The way she walked barefoot through the house like it was hers. The way she leaned a little closer when talking. The way she dressed, like she didn't care who was watching, or maybe like she did. She'd stop by almost every other day. Sometimes just to drop something off, sometimes to help my mom cook, sometimes just to chat. And each time I tried not to stare. At first, it was innocent enough. Just passing glances. Just the usual male brain doing what it does. But then came the day she wore those black linen shorts and a thin white blouse, barely buttoned, collar open. I had come into the kitchen for a glass of water, and she was reaching into the fridge. I paused in the doorway. Something about the light, the shape of her body, the soft curl of her hair tied messily behind her neck. It all made time freeze. She turned just as I looked away too late. Her eyes met mine, calm, unbothered. She closed the fridge and walked right past me, brushing her shoulder lightly against mine without a word. That moment stuck with me. After that, it got worse. Or better, depending how you looked at it. She started teasing me. Not openly, not with words, but in little things. Sitting just a little too close on the couch. Picking at food from my plate with her fingers. Saying things like, "You're not a teenager anymore," with a slight smile that never reached her eyes. She had this way of making everything feel casual and completely electric at the same time. One morning, I woke up early and headed to the kitchen for coffee. The house was quiet. I figured my mom had gone for a walk. Tanya was already there, sitting on the stool in front of the island, reading something on her phone. She wore an oversized t-shirt that fell off one shoulder, revealing a thin strap beneath. "Morning," she said, glancing up. "Morning," I replied, trying not to let my eyes linger too long. She poured a second cup without asking, slid it toward me like it was routine. "You always up this early?" "Trying to be," I said, sipping. "Feels like the day's longer that way." She smiled. "Or heavier." I didn't know what to say to that. She looked at me for a beat too long, then went back to her phone. Later that same day, she was in the backyard helping my mom repot some plants. I passed by the window and saw her bent over the flower bed, hands in soil, shirt riding up slightly at the back. I looked, longer than I should have. She turned, caught me watching, and didn't look away. Not immediately. That night I couldn't sleep. Something about her gaze, direct, amused, aware, played on repeat in my head. It wasn't like the other times. She knew, and she didn't stop it. The next day I tried to act normal, polite, detached, but the current between us had changed. I could feel it in how close she stood, in the way she looked at me while sipping wine with my mom on the porch. And I could feel it building. Something was going to break. 2 days passed. She didn't say anything about that glance through the window, but she didn't need to. Everything in the air between us had changed, and I couldn't tell if I was imagining it or if she was deliberately letting it simmer. I kept catching myself, pausing when she walked into the room, lowering my voice when speaking to her, brushing past her in tight spaces like the hallway or the laundry room and pretending it wasn't deliberate. But I also caught her, watching me, noticing how I reacted. It was never aggressive. She never made a move, never crossed a line. Not technically. But it felt like every moment with her had an invisible thread stretched between us. And it kept pulling tighter. On Thursday, my mom had to leave early for a work thing, some day-long training across town. I had the house to myself, or so I thought, until Tanya knocked on the door just after 10. She wore jeans and a light beige tank top, no makeup except for a touch of gloss. Her hair was pulled into a casual bun, a few loose strands falling around her face. "Your mom asked me to drop off some folders she forgot," she said, holding up a manila envelope. "Mind if I leave it on the table?" "Yeah, of course," I said, stepping aside. "Come in." She walked past me, familiar with the space. I caught a subtle whiff of perfume, jasmine and something warm, like amber. She placed the folder on the table, then turned back to me. "She said you might need help organizing the guest room closet too. You still haven't done it?" I gave a half laugh. "I was going to. Eventually." "I've heard that before," she said, smirking. I watched her walk down the hall toward the guest room, barefoot. I followed, telling myself it was just to help her. But when she stepped into the room and turned to face me, something shifted in her expression. Still playful, but more guarded, like she was testing something. I leaned against the doorway. "Are you always this nosy?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She raised an eyebrow. "I'm helpful. There's a difference." I laughed softly. "Sure." She looked around the guest room. Clothes stacked on the chair, half-sorted boxes against the wall. "Still living out of bags?" she asked. "I didn't expect to be here long." She nodded, then turned and bent slightly to open one of the boxes on the floor. Her shirt lifted just enough to show a thin line of skin at her back. I looked, again, and this time she didn't pretend not to notice. She straightened slowly, then she walked past me to the door and closed it. No click, no slam, just a soft, final thud that echoed louder than it should have. She turned to face me, arms crossed lightly under her chest, head tilted. "Since you like to look," she said quietly, her eyes locking with mine. My breath caught. I didn't move, didn't speak, didn't blink. She stood there, calm, sure, utterly composed, as if she hadn't just turned my world inside out with 6 words. The silence stretched, heavy and charged. I started, but my voice cracked, so I cleared my throat. "I wasn't trying to." She raised a hand, silencing me gently. "I'm not angry," she said, "just curious." I stared at her, trying to read her tone. "Curious." She took a step forward, slowly, deliberately. "You think I haven't noticed the way you've been looking at me lately?" she asked, almost amused. The kitchen, the backyard, the porch. My heart pounded. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable," I said. "You didn't," she replied. "That's the thing." Another step. We were only a few feet apart now. She looked me over, not with judgment, but with the same calm, observant gaze she always had. But now it felt exposed, focused, real. "You're not a kid anymore," she said softly. I swallowed. She reached past me then, to the closet door, and pulled it open. "Let's get this cleaned up, she said, as if nothing had happened. But everything had happened, and the door was still closed behind us. For the next few minutes, we said nothing else. We stood shoulder to shoulder, pulling out boxes, folding stray clothes, organizing things into piles like nothing had happened. Like her words, "Since you like to look," hadn't cracked open a silence we'd both been pretending not to notice. But they had, and it was impossible to close that door now. She passed me a stack of shirts. I took them with slightly shaky hands. "You okay?" she asked, not looking at me. "Yeah," I said too quickly. She smiled. A small one. The kind that said I know. We worked in silence again. The sun poured in through the side window, warming the dust in the air, catching in her hair. Every time she moved, every time her arm brushed mine or she leaned close to reach a shelf, it felt deliberate. Or maybe I was just hyper-aware. Maybe I was looking for signs. But then she spoke again. "You've changed," she said casually, folding a hoodie. "How so?" She paused, glancing over her shoulder at me. "You're taller. Your voice is deeper. You think I didn't notice? I didn't think you were paying that much attention." "I always pay attention," she said, turning back to the drawer. I stared at her for a moment too long. She must have felt it, because she said, without turning, "There it is again." "What?" "That look." I hesitated. "What look?" She turned to face me, leaning back against the dresser now, arms crossed. "The one that says you've been thinking about things you shouldn't be thinking about." I opened my mouth to protest, but she cut me off. "Don't lie," she said. "Not now. Not after you watched me in the backyard. Not after this morning in the kitchen." I looked down, but she stepped forward, closing the space. "It's okay," she said, softer now. "I'm not judging you." My voice came out rough. "I didn't mean to. It's not like I planned to." "I know," she said almost kindly. "It just happened." We stood there, the air between us thick. I could hear the hum of the fan down the hallway, the creak of wood under her bare feet as she shifted her weight. I met her eyes. "You could have said something earlier. I wanted to see if you'd grow out of it." "Did I?" She tilted her head, amused. "You tell me." Another silence stretched, and in it I felt the weight of every thought I'd tried to suppress since that first morning. "I don't just look," I said quietly. "It's not just that." Her expression changed then, not surprise, more like a quiet recognition, as if she'd been waiting for me to admit it. "You think I haven't noticed?" she asked again. "You think I haven't felt it every time you're near?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. "I'm not stupid," she continued, "and I'm not reckless. But don't think for a second that I'm blind." She stepped closer again until we were nearly toe to toe. "But this isn't a game. It's not a fantasy." "I know." "You sure?" I nodded. She searched my face for something. Doubt, hesitation, maybe immaturity. Whatever it was, she didn't seem to find it. "Because if you're going to act like a man," she said quietly, "you have to be one." I took a slow breath. "Then let me." A long pause. Then she said the words that I would replay in my head for days. "If you walk out now, nothing changes. We'll go back to folded laundry and polite smiles. But if you stay, I won't stop you. Just know there's no going back." Her voice was calm, controlled. My hand was trembling at my side. She turned then, giving me her back, and picked up another shirt from the bed like the moment had passed. But it hadn't, because I didn't move. I didn't leave, and she knew it. The rest of the day passed in a haze. I didn't see her leave the house. Maybe I was in the shower, or maybe she slipped out deliberately, not wanting to add anything more to what had already been said. But when I walked into the kitchen that evening, the folder was gone from the table, and the guest room closet was neatly stacked. She'd cleaned it all up, quietly, efficiently, like it had never happened. My mom came home around 7, chatting cheerfully about her training and the boring lunch sandwiches they'd served. I nodded in the right places, laughed when I was supposed to, and kept my eyes on my plate. But the silence inside me was louder than ever. Later that night, after my mom had gone to bed and the lights were off, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The shadows from the trees outside crawled across the wall. The fan hummed above. My phone sat untouched beside me. My chest was tight, not just with nerves, but with that quiet certainty you feel when you've crossed a line in your mind and there's no pulling back. At 11:42 p.m., I got up. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I just moved, barefoot, quiet, down the hallway to the front of the house. Tanya's car was still outside. I stood in front of her door for a long time. Maybe she was asleep. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe I was still just a boy, playing at being something more. But I raised my hand anyway, and knocked. Once, twice. Then I heard footsteps. Slow, controlled. The door opened. She was in a dark robe, tied loosely at the waist. Her hair was down, falling past her shoulders. No makeup, just her. The way she looked at me, it wasn't surprise. It wasn't shock. It was acceptance, as if she'd already known I would come. She didn't say anything right away. She just stepped back slightly. An invitation. I stepped inside. The door closed softly behind me. No click, no slam, just the same soft sound it had made earlier that day. She walked past me, barefoot on the hardwood floor, and stopped at the window, pulling the curtain slightly to check outside. Then she turned, arms still folded lightly across her chest. "You sure about this?" she asked. I nodded. "I've never been more sure of anything." She studied me for a long second. Then, "Good. But this time you don't just get to look.